My 8-year-old mute granddaughter pointed at my tea and said, "Don't drink it." I froze. She'd never spoken before. Then she looked me dead in the eye and kept going. My stomach dropped. I didn't panic. I did this. 7 days later, her mother went completely white because I wasn't the sweet, lonely grandma she thought she was drugging. Let me back up. My name is Patricia Morgan. I live in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, one of those neighborhoods where everyone waves, nobody actually knows anyone's last name, and the HOA will fine you for breathing too aggressively. I'm a widow, a homeowner, and, according to my daughter-in-law, apparently at that age. You know the tone. My son, Brian, is 34 and still thinks adulting is something you do between streaming subscriptions. He's a good man, soft around the edges, the kind of guy who'd apologize to a chair after bumping into it. His wife, Melissa, is also a kind of chair, the kind with spikes. Melissa is what I call Pinterest polite. Everything is love, sweetie. I just want what's best. And somehow you end up signing something you didn't read while she smiles like a Disney villain in yoga pants. They'd been married 6 years. 6 years of my son slowly shrinking in family photos. And then there was Nora, my granddaughter, 8 years old, big brown eyes, quiet as snowfall. The doctors had labeled her nonverbal early on. Developmental delays, anxiety, selective mutism, a whole list of words that basically meant she doesn't talk. And in our world, that was just Nora. Until that tea. It started with a vacation. Brian called me on a Tuesday night, voice bright in that overly cheerful way people get right before they ask for a favor. "Mom," he said, "Melissa and I found this deal for a resort in Florida. Like, ridiculous deal. We really need it. Just a week. Could you stay with Nora?" "Stay with her," I repeated, because apparently that needed clarification. "You mean, in your house, overnight. Me, the grandma. Just 7 days," he said quickly. "She'll be fine. She's used to you. Melissa already planned everything out." Of course she did. If Melissa planned a sneeze, she'd email you a color-coded schedule and ask you to sign a waiver. "Patricia," Melissa's voice slid into the call like perfume. "It'll be easy. I made a binder." "A binder? Of course." "Everything is labeled," she continued. "Meals, routines, therapies, emergency numbers, and I left you my special herbal tea. It's calming. It'll help you sleep." The way she said calming made my skin itch. But I smiled anyway, because that's what you do when you're dealing with someone who thinks manners are a weapon. "Sounds lovely," I said. "Perfect," Melissa chirped. We leave Saturday morning. Saturday came. They pulled out of the driveway with suitcases and sunglasses like they were starring in a commercial. Melissa hugged Nora with dramatic intensity, like she was leaving for war. "Be good," she whispered to her, a little too close to her ear. Then she kissed her forehead and turned to me. "Patricia, don't forget the tea," she said, pressing a glass jar into my hands like it was sacred. "1 cup every night." The jar was filled with dried herbs, chamomile, lavender, something citrusy. It smelled fine. That's what made it worse. Brian hugged me, kissed my cheek. "Thanks, Mom. Seriously." And then they were gone. The house felt too quiet. Nora stood in the entryway, small and still, watching the taillights disappear. I crouched down. "Hey, Peanut," I said softly. "It's just us for a week, okay? We're going to be fine." Nora didn't respond. She rarely did, but she lifted her eyes to mine, sharp, alert, like she was holding a secret so heavy it bent her spine. I chalked it up to nerves. I shouldn't have. That first day was normal. Breakfast, cartoons, a little walk around the block. Nora stayed close to me like a shadow. Melissa texted constantly. Don't forget speech exercises. Limit sugar. Tea tonight. She likes her bath warm, not hot. And your tea. Yes, Melissa. My tea. Thank you for the reminder, Captain Control Freak. That night, after Nora's bath, I warmed up the kettle. The kitchen light hummed. The house creaked the way houses do when they're old and full of memories. I set 2 mugs on the counter, one for me, one for, well, mostly me. Nora never drank tea. I spooned the herbs into the strainer and poured the hot water. Steam curled up. It smelled like every self-care post on Instagram. Nora wandered in quietly, pajama sleeves pulled over her hands. She watched me with that same intense focus. I lifted the mug toward my lips. I took one small sip, barely enough to taste it. And Nora moved, fast. She reached up, small hand grabbing my wrist. Her grip was shockingly strong. Then she pointed at the tea, and she spoke. Clear, calm, like she'd been doing it her whole life. Don't drink it. I froze. Every muscle, every thought, everything. Because Nora didn't speak. Nora didn't whisper. She didn't hum. She didn't even make noise when she cried. And now she was looking at my mug like it was a loaded gun. What did you say? I breathed. Nora's eyes didn't flicker. Don't drink it, she repeated. She put something in it. She? My mouth felt dry. Melissa? Nora nodded once. My heart did something unpleasant in my chest, like it tried to crawl out through my throat. Sweetheart, I said slowly. How are you? I can talk, she said, like she was stating her shoe size. I just don't. Not when she's listening. The kettle clicked off behind us, a cheerful little sound that did not match the moment. I set the mug down carefully, like it might explode. Nora, I whispered, why didn't you tell me? Her face tightened. Her voice dropped. She said if I told, she'd send me back. My stomach turned. Back where? Nora swallowed. Back to foster care. Back to strangers. She said she'd call my old caseworker and tell them I'm broken, and they'd take me away again. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Because Nora wasn't Melissa's biological child. Nora had come into their lives through foster to adopt. A complicated story, a hard beginning, and Melissa was using that trauma like a leash. I took a breath, one of those deep breaths you take when you're trying not to scream. What did she put in the tea? I asked, voice steady. Nora shrugged, but there was something sickly practiced in it, like she'd been forced to learn how to answer without saying too much. White powder, she said. She crushed it. I saw. She said it'll make you sleep. Then you'll get confused. Then you'll sign. Sign what? I asked. Nora stared at me, and for the first time I saw fear crack through her calm. Your house, she whispered. My blood went cold. Oh, so that was the game. Not calming tea, not helping Grandma sleep. This was a slow, polite robbery, and my daughter-in-law had apparently decided I was next. I should tell you I yelled, that I grabbed my phone and called Brian, demanded answers, threatened lawsuits, made dramatic speeches. I didn't, because panic makes you sloppy. And Melissa thrived on sloppy. So I did the one thing she would never expect from Patricia at that age. I smiled. I leaned down, kissed Nora's forehead, and said softly, Okay, thank you for telling me. Then I picked up my mug, and I walked to the sink. I dumped the tea down the drain like I was casually watering the pipes. Nora's shoulders loosened, just a little. Then I rinsed the mug. Calm. Normal. Grandma things. And when I turned back around, I kept my voice gentle. Sweetheart, I said, We're going to play a game this week, a grown-up game. Nora blinked. A game? Yes, I said. It's called Let Melissa Think She's Winning. Nora stared at me. Then, in the tiniest flicker of a moment, she almost smiled. Almost. That was enough. Step 1. I needed proof. Because in America, you can walk into a police station and say, "My daughter-in-law is drugging me." And they'll look at you like you just accused her of stealing your garden gnomes. Step 2. I needed Nora safe. Because if Melissa had threatened her into silence once, she'd do worse if she felt cornered. So I moved carefully, quietly, like someone setting a trap for a fox. I cleaned up the kitchen, tucked Nora into bed, and waited until the house was still. Then I opened Melissa's precious binder. The thing was thick enough to stop a bullet. Inside were schedules, meal plans, and a page titled Mom's Wellness Routine. Because of course, that page had one item circled in pink. Herbal tea. Nightly, no exceptions. No exceptions. I took a photo of the page with my phone. Then I went to the pantry. Melissa had lined up supplies like a doomsday prepper, except instead of canned beans, it was gluten-free crackers and immune-boosting gummies. The tea jar sat front and center. I didn't touch it with my bare hands. Yes, I know that sounds dramatic. But when your daughter-in-law might be poisoning you, you develop a sudden respect for fingerprints. I grabbed a clean mason jar, poured a spoonful of the tea blend into it, sealed it, and labeled it with a Sharpie. Tea sample, Saturday. Then I took another photo. Then I texted Melissa, because I needed her to keep talking. Me. Nora's asleep. I'm having your tea now, so relaxing. Within 30 seconds. Melissa. Good. Make sure you drink the whole cup. Night, Patricia. Oh, Melissa. Thank you for putting your greed in writing. I slept poorly that night. Not because of sedatives, but because my brain wouldn't stop sprinting. By morning, I had a plan. First, the medical piece. I called my primary care office as soon as they opened. Dr. Miller's nurse, the voice answered. Hi, I said, keeping my tone light. This is Patricia Morgan. I need to come in today. Something urgent. There was a pause. Are you having chest pain? No, I said. I'm being potentially poisoned. Silence. Then, okay. Yes. Let's get you in. Bless that nurse. She didn't laugh. She didn't ask if I was watching too much true crime. She just moved. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a clinic room while Dr. Susan Miller, a sharp woman in her 50s who did not tolerate nonsense, looked at me over her glasses. You think someone is drugging you? She said. I think someone is putting something in my tea, I replied. Dr. Miller's eyebrow lifted. And you didn't drink it? Not more than a single sip before Nora stopped me, I said. But I want to know what it is. And I want it documented. Now here's the thing about doctors. Some will brush you off. Some will blame stress. Some will tell you to meditate. Dr. Miller? She leaned forward. Do you have the tea? She asked. I have a sample, I said. Good, she said briskly. We're doing labs, toxicology screen, and if anything shows up, I'm making a report. My throat tightened. Report to who? I asked. Adult Protective Services, she said plainly. This is elder abuse if it's real, and if it's not real, we'll still have your labs and your peace of mind. I nodded. Do it. They drew blood, took urine. The glamorous side of being a target, truly. On the way home, I stopped at a pharmacy and bought a small lockbox. Nora thought it was for treasure. In a way, it was. Back home, Nora sat at the kitchen table coloring while I called the second person on my list, an attorney. Not a, my friend's cousin does legal stuff attorney, a real one. James Whitman's office was downtown. His receptionist answered in that polished voice people get when they bill by the hour. "Whitman and Associates." "My name is Patricia Morgan," I said. "I need to speak to Mr. Whitman. It's about potential elder exploitation." There was a shift in tone immediately. "One moment, ma'am." James came on the line himself. "Ms. Morgan," he said calmly, "tell me what's going on." So I did. I told him about Melissa's tea, Nora's warning, the threat about foster care, the talk of signing over my house. And then I got quiet. "I need this to be real," I said. "I need it to hold up. Because if I accuse her and I'm wrong, I'm done. My son will never forgive me." James didn't rush me. He didn't speak down to me. He just listened. Then he said, "If you're right, your son will be grateful you saved him from her. If you're wrong, we'll still proceed carefully and protect you from retaliation. Either way, we document. We don't guess." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "What do I do?" I asked. "3 things," he said. 1. Don't confront her yet. 2. Preserve evidence, texts, samples, any written instructions. 3. Contact Adult Protective Services today. Not tomorrow. Today. I hesitated. "A P.S. Won't that blow things up?" "It starts a paper trail," he said. "And if there's a child involved who was threatened, you may also need a report with CPS. But let's start with APS. You can do this without creating a scene." Without creating a scene. That was my specialty. After I hung up, I looked at Nora. She was coloring a horse, very carefully, like she was trying to keep the world neat by keeping her crayon inside the lines. I sat beside her. "Hey," I said quietly. Nora didn't look up, but her shoulders tensed. "You were very brave last night," I said. Her hand paused. "She'll be mad," Nora whispered. "No," I said firmly. "She'll be caught. Those are different things." Nora's eyes flicked to mine. "What if she says I'm lying?" "She can say whatever she wants," I said. "But we're going to make sure people believe you." I could see the question trembling on her face. "Because you're going to tell them," I added gently. "Not in court, not in front of strangers yelling, but to someone whose whole job is listening to kids. Someone safe." Nora swallowed hard. Then she nodded. Day 2 was paperwork day. I called Adult Protective Services and made a report. The woman on the phone asked careful questions, like she'd heard this story 1,000 times, and that made my skin crawl. Because if she'd heard it 1,000 times, that meant Melissa wasn't some rare monster. She was a type. They gave me a case number. They told me not to confront Melissa. They told me to call 911 if I felt in immediate danger. They told me they would follow up. Then I called the local child advocacy center. I didn't even know those existed until that morning. The woman who answered was gentle but direct. "We can schedule a forensic interview," she said. "A trained interviewer will speak with Nora in a child-friendly setting. It's recorded. It can be used later if there's an investigation." Nora didn't flinch at the word recorded. She flinched at the word later. So I held her hand and said, "You're not alone." That afternoon, Melissa FaceTimed. Her skin was sun-kissed. Her hair was too perfect. She was wearing sunglasses inside like she was allergic to accountability. "Patricia," she sang. "How are my babies?" I angled the phone so she could see Nora sitting on the couch. Nora didn't look at the screen. Melissa's smile tightened slightly. "She's okay?" Melissa asked. "Great," I lied. "We're doing fine. I'm following your binder." Melissa beamed. "Perfect. And the tea?" "Oh, yes," I said, sweet as syrup. "Every night." Nora's fingers tightened around the cushion. I squeezed her shoulder gently. Melissa leaned closer to the camera. "Good. You know, At your age, sleep is so important. You can get confused when you don't rest. Ah, there it was. The seed. The little narrative she wanted planted. I smiled. You're right. It's been very calming. Melissa's eyes shone with satisfaction. After we hung up, I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. But rage is fuel if you don't spill it too early. Day 3, Dr. Miller called. Patricia, she said, voice tight. Your labs are back. I sat down immediately. Nora was at the table eating apple slices. She watched me like she understood the gravity without needing the words. Dr. Miller didn't waste time. There's a sedative in your system, she said. Not a trace. Not maybe from a medication. It's there. And it's not something you should be taking. My mouth went numb. I only took one sip before Nora stopped me, I said. You've likely been exposed before, she replied. Or through food, or another drink. But Patricia, you were right to call. I closed my eyes. Because being right wasn't comforting. Being right meant Melissa had already been doing this. Dr. Miller continued, I'm filing a report. And I want you to stay with someone if possible. I can't, I said. Not yet. There was a pause. Then Dr. Miller's tone hardened. Then you lock your doors, she said. You tell me if you feel dizzy, and you do not. Do you hear me? Do not drink anything she prepares. I hear you, I said. After that call, I put the tea jar in the lockbox. Then I did something that felt surreal. I went online and ordered a small security camera set, one that could sit on a shelf in the kitchen and look like a normal gadget. 2-day shipping. Thank you, capitalism. Meanwhile, James Whitman sent me an email with a list of documents to gather. Deed to my home, any wills, any powers of attorney, bank statements. Because the truth is, if someone wants to exploit you, they don't start with a ski mask. They start with a family dinner. And a pen. That night, Nora and I ate mac and cheese because trauma deserves carbs. After dinner, she sat beside me on the couch, feet tucked under her, and whispered, She did it to Mrs. Keller. Who? I asked softly. Nora's voice was small. The lady at church. The one with the big hat. My heart sank. What happened? Nora picked at the seam of her pajama pants. Mom said she was helping her, Nora said. She'd bring groceries, make her tea, talk about paperwork. She said Mrs. Keller didn't know what she was signing. I swallowed. Did you see papers? Nora nodded. A folder. Mom said, if she signs the deed, we're done. The word deed came out of Nora's mouth like she'd memorized it. Like a child reciting something she didn't fully understand, but knew was dangerous. Where is Mrs. Keller now? I asked. Nora shrugged. Mom said she went to a facility. A facility. That's what people say when they don't want to say we took her freedom. I held Nora close. I wanted to promise her Melissa would never touch anyone again. But promises are cheap. Proof is expensive. So on day 4, Nora and I went to the Child Advocacy Center. It didn't look like a government building. It looked like a small house painted in cheerful colors. Inside, there were toys, soft chairs, a fish tank bubbling quietly. Nora clutched my hand like it was a lifeline. A woman introduced herself as an interviewer. She spoke to Nora like she mattered, like her words were valuable, not inconvenient. I didn't get to sit in the room. They explained that was important. No pressure, no coaching, no influence. So I waited in a separate area, staring at a wall poster that said, "You are safe here." I almost laughed at the irony, because safe wasn't a place. Safe was a battle. After an hour, Nora came out looking drained but lighter. like she'd been carrying a boulder and finally set it down. The interviewer came out afterward and said quietly, "Thank you for bringing her. We'll be forwarding this to the appropriate agencies." "Is she believed?" I asked. The woman's gaze was steady. "We take children seriously here." I blinked back tears. "Good," I whispered, "because I plan to take this all the way." Day 5, the cameras arrived. I installed one in the kitchen and one in the living room. Nora watched me with fascination. "It's like spy stuff," she whispered. "It is spy stuff," I said. "But the boring kind. The kind where the spy wears reading glasses and mutters about Wi-Fi." That afternoon, Melissa called again. She sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. "Patricia," she said, "I just wanted to check in. Are you feeling okay? You sounded tired last time." I leaned into the phone like I was confiding a secret. "Oh, I've been so sleepy," I said. "I guess your tea really works." Melissa hummed happily. "See? I told you, some people just need help regulating. At your age, the mind can slip." There it was again. Slip. Confusion. Her narrative was building. I kept my voice soft. "It's strange, though," I added. "Sometimes I can't remember if I took my vitamins." Melissa laughed lightly. "Oh, that happens." Nora sat across the room, eyes wide. I gave her a tiny nod. I put the call on speaker and set the phone under the kitchen camera. The camera caught everything. After the call, I texted James. "She's fishing for signs of confusion. I have recordings." He replied, "Good. Keep her talking. Also, APS is coordinating with law enforcement. Don't meet her alone when she returns." Day 6, APS called me back. A caseworker asked questions. Calm, methodical questions. Did Melissa have access to my finances? Did she have keys? Had she ever pressured me to sign anything? Did I have any cognitive diagnoses? Was Nora safe? I answered everything honestly. Then the caseworker said, "We're escalating this. A detective may contact you." My hands went cold again. Because escalation meant reality, it meant this wasn't just family drama. This was crime. That night, Nora couldn't sleep. She crawled into bed beside me, small and rigid, like she didn't know how to relax in peace. "She's coming tomorrow," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "What if she gets mad?" Nora asked. I stared at the ceiling and said quietly, "Then she should have picked a different hobby." Nora let out a tiny breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Then she whispered, "When she gets mad, she smiles first." That sentence broke something in me, because no child should know that kind of pattern. So I kissed Nora's forehead and said, "Tomorrow, you stay behind me. You don't have to be brave again. You already did the hardest part." Nora's voice was barely audible. "Talking?" "Yes," I whispered. "Talking." Day 7, the day Melissa came home. I woke up early, made pancakes, because I am, at my core, still a grandmother with a flair for domestic irony. I dressed like I was going to a normal family brunch, not like I was setting up an arrest. My phone buzzed. "Brian. Landing soon. See you in a few hours. Love you." I stared at the message, and for a brief moment, grief washed over me. Because Brian didn't know. He thought this was just a vacation and a grateful mom, and I was about to tear his life in half. But then I remembered Nora's words. "She smiles first." And I hardened. Late afternoon, their car pulled into the driveway. Nora stood by the window, shaking slightly. I put a hand on her shoulder. "Breathe," I said. "You're safe." The front door opened. Melissa entered first, sunglasses pushed up, skin glowing, energy loud. "Home sweet home," she declared. Brian followed with bags, looking tired but happy. "Mom," he said, grinning. How'd it go? It went, I said, smiling. Melissa swept toward me and hugged me dramatically. I patted her back like you pat a stranger's dog. Then she pulled away and immediately scanned my face. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Looking for what? Droopy eyelids? Slurred speech? Confusion? I gave her none of it. Oh! Melissa clapped her hands. Patricia, I almost forgot. While we were away, I spoke to someone about your situation. My situation. I found this great financial planner, she continued, too bright. He said we should get some paperwork in place, just in case you ever get overwhelmed. Brian frowned. Melissa, it's fine, she cut in sweetly. It's just responsible. Patricia, you know how it is. You don't want to burden Brian. Oh, the guilt angle. Classic. Melissa set a folder on the table like she was presenting dessert. There's a power of attorney, she said, and some forms related to the house. Nothing scary, just signatures. I looked at the folder, then I looked at her, and I smiled. Sure, I said. Let's talk. Melissa's shoulders relaxed. She thought she was winning. Brian looked uneasy. Mom, you don't have to sign anything if you don't want to. I placed my hand over his. I know, I said gently. But I do want to hear what Melissa has to say. Melissa beamed. Sit, she said, pulling out a chair for me like she was hosting a talk show. Nora hovered behind me, silent. Melissa glanced at her. Go play, Nora. Nora didn't move. Melissa's smile tightened. Nora? Nora's small hand slid into mine. I squeezed back. Okay, I said lightly. Walk me through it, Melissa. Melissa opened the folder and began speaking quickly, confidently, too confidently, like someone repeating a script. This is just so we can help you with bills if you get confused, she said. And this one is about the house deed, just a transfer to the family trust. It's normal. Everyone does it. Everyone does it. Sure. I leaned in. And what about the tea? I asked suddenly. Melissa blinked. What? The tea, I repeated, still smiling. The calming tea you insisted I drink every night. No exceptions. Brian looked between us. Tea? Melissa laughed. Oh my God, Patricia, are we really doing this? I tilted my head. Doing what? This paranoia, she said, her voice syrupy but sharp underneath. You always get dramatic. Brian's brow furrowed. Mom, what's going on? I didn't answer him yet. I looked at Nora. Nora's face was pale, but her eyes were steady. I nodded once. Nora took a breath, and then my granddaughter, my silent, nonverbal little girl, spoke again, right there in the kitchen, in front of her parents. She put medicine in it, Nora said clearly. She told me not to tell. She said if I did, I'd go back. The room snapped into silence. Brian's mouth fell open. Nora, you... Melissa went still. Not angry, not defensive, just frozen, like her brain had hit a wall. And then slowly, her face went completely white, because she realized something. Nora wasn't a quiet little prop anymore. She was a witness. Melissa's lips parted. Nora, honey, no, Nora said, voice shaking now but still loud enough. You said Grandma would get confused and sign. You said I had to keep my mouth shut. Brian turned to Melissa, disbelief twisting into horror. Melissa, what is she talking about? Melissa's eyes darted to me. Patricia, you coached her. I laughed. A short, humorless sound. Oh, Melissa, I said, you really think I'm organized enough to coach a child? I can barely coach myself into drinking enough water. Melissa's jaw tightened. This is insane. Is it? I asked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Because I have your texts, I said softly, telling me to drink the whole cup. Every night. No exceptions. Brian's face tightened. Melissa, why would you? And I have lab results, I continued, voice calm, showing a sedative in my system. Melissa's eyes widened. For the first time, she looked scared. Brian whispered, What? And, I added, I have audio from my home security camera. Melissa's head snapped up. You recorded me? I tapped my screen, and the room filled with her own voice. At your age, the mind can slip. You can get confused. That happens. Melissa lunged toward me instinctively, like she wanted to snatch the phone. But she stopped. Because there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp knocks. I didn't move. Brian looked confused. Who is that? Melissa's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me, and I saw it. The calculation. The sudden realization that this was bigger than family. I walked to the door and opened it. A uniformed officer stood on my porch beside a woman holding a badge and a clipboard. Ms. Morgan? The woman asked. Yes, I said. I'm with Adult Protective Services, she said. And this is Detective... Melissa made a sound behind me. A thin, strangled inhale. The detective stepped forward. Ma'am, we need to speak with you. Brian looked like he might faint. Mom, he whispered. What did you do? I turned to him, eyes stinging. I protected us, I said quietly. I protected Nora. Melissa backed up a step. This is ridiculous. You can't. The detective's voice was firm. Melissa, we have a report. We have medical documentation, and we have reason to believe you attempted to exploit an elderly person financially and potentially administered a controlled substance without consent. Melissa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She looked at Brian. She expected him to fix it, because Brian always fixed it. But Brian's face had changed. His softness was gone. He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time and hating what he saw. No, he said hoarsely. No, you wouldn't. Melissa's eyes filled instantly, fake tears, perfectly timed. Brian, she whispered. She's lying. She's turning you against me. Brian's voice shook. Nora just spoke. For the first time. And the first thing she did was warn my mom. Melissa's tears faltered. Because she didn't have a script for that. The detective asked her to step outside. Melissa resisted at first, then tried to switch tactics, crying, bargaining, blaming me, blaming stress, blaming misunderstandings. But when the caseworker mentioned Nora's interview at the advocacy center, Melissa's face collapsed. Because she hadn't expected that. She'd expected silence. And now the silence was gone. Brian sank into a chair, head in his hands. Nora stood behind me, trembling. I wrapped an arm around her. I'm sorry, Brian whispered, voice cracking. Mom, I'm so sorry. I kissed the top of his head like he was 8 years old again. I know, I said softly. I know you didn't see it. Outside, Melissa's voice rose, sharp, desperate. Then it cut off, and the world went strangely quiet. That night, Nora and I slept at my house. Not Brian's, mine. Because I wasn't letting anyone move Nora around like luggage again. With James's help, I filed an emergency petition for temporary guardianship. APS backed the request. The detective took my statement. Dr. Miller's report went into the file. James Whitman worked like a machine. Within 48 hours, I had temporary emergency guardianship while the court sorted out the mess. Brian stayed in the picture, of course. He wasn't the villain. He was the guy who married one, and he had to live with that. Melissa was charged. And once the investigation opened, other names surfaced. Mrs. Keller and 2 others. Patterns. Paper trails. Quiet elderly people whose families had questions and no answers. Melissa had built a whole little side hustle out of smiling and helping, and now that hustle was over. Weeks later, Nora sat at my kitchen table sipping cocoa. Real cocoa. No calming anything. She looked up at me and said softly, "Grandma?" I froze again. Not from fear this time. From awe. "Yes, baby." "I'm glad you didn't drink it," she said. I walked over and hugged her. "Me too," I whispered. "I'm very glad." Nora's voice trembled. "Do you think I can talk more now?" I pulled back and looked at her face. "You can do whatever you want," I said. "And anyone who tries to take your voice away again is going to have to go through me." Nora blinked slowly, like she was trying to believe that. Then she nodded, and she smiled. A real smile. Not the kind you do right before you hurt someone. The kind you do when you finally feel safe. Do you know what the funny part is? Melissa thought the tea was the weapon, but the real weapon was Nora's voice. All I did was make sure she got to use it. And if you're wondering what happened to the tea, I kept the jar. Not because I'm sentimental, because I'm a grandmother, and when someone tries to poison you in your own kitchen, you don't forget. You document. You lock your doors, and you make sure they never get a second cup. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more. I paid for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary at a luxury hotel in Manhattan. I wired the deposit, paid for the band, the flowers, the open bar, even a custom cake. I bought them a Swiss watch set that cost more than some people's cars. In return, my mother pointed at me and told security, "Get this beggar out of here!" So I showed them what their beggar was really worth. I walked into the lobby of the plaza in a $4,000 dress and felt like I'd accidentally stolen someone else's life. The dress? A pale, sleek thing from a designer who usually dresses women who brunch on the Upper East Side, fit perfectly. My hair, fresh from a salon in Soho, still held that expensive wave. Only the mascara betrayed me, carving black rivers down cheeks I'd tried to contour into effortlessly happy. In my hands, I was still clutching a velvet box, a pair of Swiss watches worth about $6,000, a small gift for 50 years of marriage. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." The security guy took me lightly by the elbow. That polished, trained gentleness expensive places require. "Your name was removed from the guest list last night. I'm afraid I can't let you in." Removed. He said it like we were talking about a typo, not a daughter. "Removed by whom?" "Your parents asked us to update the list," the manager added, eyes soft with professional pity. "Again, we're very sorry. Please." Behind the glass doors, I could see everything. My mom, in a gold dress, hugging my younger brother Mike. My dad, lifting a champagne flute. My younger sister Erica, laughing loudly, holding court with her friends. A family celebration. My family. Just without me. I took a breath that felt like it hit concrete halfway down. "Let me talk to my mother," I said. They hesitated, but someone opened the door to the ballroom a crack. My mom didn't even step into the hall. She spoke from inside, like I was a delivery she hadn't ordered. "We thought you wouldn't come, Megan," she said, sounding inconvenienced. "This is a family event. It's really just for close family." Family. Without me. I held out the velvet box. "For you and Dad," I managed. She didn't take it. Instead, she turned to the nearest waiter. "Please take this away. Get it out of here." Then she waved toward me with that same dismissive flick she used on telemarketers. "Actually, get her out. Get this beggar out of here." The word hit harder than the cold wind waiting outside. Beggar. After I had wired over $7,000 for the banquet deposit. After 10 years of paying their bills, covering Mike's business ideas, funding Erica's girls' trips and emergency credit cards. I was the beggar. The doors closed. The elevator down to the lobby crawled, giving me way too much time to stare at myself in mirrored walls. Woman in a designer dress, mascara smeared, fingers shaking around a box no one wanted. On a monitor in the corner, they were streaming the live feed from the ballroom for the staff. I watched my mother hugging Mike, Dad giving some heartfelt toast, Erica laughing with a glass in her hand. Family celebration. Without me. Couples glided past me in the lobby, giving me those quick, curious looks people give car accidents they're not sure they're allowed to stare at. The doorman held the door open. February wind off the Hudson slapped me in the face, sharp and wet. To downtown? I croaked to the cab driver as I slid into the back seat. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, at the ruined makeup, the expensive dress, and didn't ask a single question. He'd seen this before. Women in good shoes leaving someone else's happiness. New York blurred past in streaks of light. I hugged the watch box like it was the last thing anchoring me to reality. I was 34, a successful investment analyst, owner of my own consulting agency. Clients from the Upper East Side and the Hamptons trusted me with millions, and to my own parents, I was a beggar. In my head, their words looped like a scratched record. I'm not your daughter. You're always on your own, Megan. We have our own. Our own, in their dictionary, never included me. By the time the cab pulled into the underground garage of my building, a glass and steel tower in downtown Manhattan, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely swipe my card to pay the driver. No one from my family had ever been here. Why would we go into those anthills? My mother always scoffed whenever I invited them. We like real homes, not boxes in the sky. My box in the sky was a 2-bedroom condo on the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a designer kitchen. I'd paid for all of it myself. In the dark, empty garage, everything I'd swallowed for 34 years ripped its way out. The scream came from somewhere low and animal and ugly. It tore my throat raw and bounced off concrete. Years of swallowed comments and, we didn't mean it like that, and, you know your brother needs more help than you do. My phone vibrated. Hey! Stacy's voice beamed from the speaker. How's the golden couple? Are you dancing already? Send me a pic of that dress. I want to hate you properly. I swallowed metal. They threw me out, I said. The words scraped. I'm not their daughter. Silence. No crackle. No joke. Where are you? Garage. In my car. Stay there. Don't drive. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, she was banging on the window of my car. She didn't say anything, just opened the door and wrapped her arms around me like she was physically holding me together. Upstairs, in my overly tidy living room, I collapsed on the couch and poured it all out. The ballroom, the guest list, the manager, the word beggar, my mom talking to me through a crack in the door like I was the wrong delivery. Stacy reheated takeout pilaf, poured red wine, unzipped the back of my dress. $4,000 sliding to the floor in a puddle of fabric. This isn't just toxic, she said finally. This is psychological abuse. You know that, right? You're not being dramatic. You're a victim. Victim. I'd never used that word about myself. I was the strong one, the responsible one, the one who could handle it. I'm not a victim, I muttered. I run portfolios. I fix things. Yeah, she nodded. You fix everyone's mess but your own. Something clicked in my brain. I have a spreadsheet, I blurted. An actual one. I've always tracked the money, just in case. I dragged my laptop across the coffee table, still in my slip, and opened a file named, very creatively, family_expenses.xlsx. It opened instantly. Rows and rows and rows. Dates, transfers, purchases, payments. 10 years of just this once, and we'll pay you back, and you understand, you're good with money. At the bottom, in the total cell, a number glowed. 15,347,000. As a raw number, it had always felt abstract. When I translated it into real money in my head, it landed around $200,000. $200,000. My chest tightened. That was a decent condo in New York. That was a comfortable retirement. That was a business from scratch, a boat, a year of travel around the world. That was an entire life I had handed to people who had just called me a beggar. I scrolled through the rows. Erica's tutors for her kids, month after month, about $1,600 each time. New bedroom furniture for my parents, $5,000. Mike's barber shop, roughly $36,000. My parents' spa retreat in Palm Springs, about $11,000. Full renovation of my parents' apartment, over $40,000. Every line was a slice of my time. Every figure was a trip I didn't take, a dream I postponed for later. I fed them, dressed them, entertained them, patched their holes, rescued their bad decisions. In return, I got, "Get this beggar out of here!" My family had been slowly eating my life through endless small requests, and I'd let them because I thought that was what love looked like. Spoiler, it's not. Love, I realized, was Erica's crooked kindergarten drawing of a house with a sun that hung over my parents' couch for 30 years. Love was Mike setting the garage on fire at 14 and everyone laughing, "Boys will be boys." Love was having a permanent seat at the table, no questions asked. For me, love was, "You're strong. You'll manage." I was the ATM, always stocked, always available. About $200,000 over 10 years. Not a cent of actual affection. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember Stacy's voice, the glow of the laptop, and that number at the bottom of the spreadsheet, burning holes in my retinas. 15,347,000. 200,000. Price of admission to a family that still saw me as an outsider. To understand how I got there. $200,000 deep into funding people who could throw me out of a party I paid for. You have to back up. Way back. I don't remember the first time I realized I was the extra child. Probably around the time I started bringing home certificates. At 9, I won first place in a district math competition. I came home with a printed certificate and the kind of grin you only get when numbers finally obey you. My dad glanced up from the TV just long enough to say, "Sit with Mike. He needs to memorize his multiplication table." He didn't even read what the award was for. Mike's crooked crayon house with a sun, though? That drawing hung above the couch for years. When I graduated from NYU's business school with honors, in the cap and gown and all that, there's a photo of me on the stage, smiling into a crowd that isn't mine. My parents didn't come. "Mike has finals," Mom said. "He's stressed." Translation: his exam anxiety outranked my entire degree. At 14, Mike burned down half the garage trying to fix something with gasoline and a lighter. Mom giggled. "Well, boys are like that, full of ideas." At 15, I was tutoring other kids in algebra so I could buy myself winter boots that didn't leak. Middle child. Invisible child. The one who would figure it out. And I did. I worked 14-hour days in a venture fund. Startups, pitch decks, endless meetings. At 30, I launched my own consulting agency. Clients trusted me with their portfolios, their retirement, their kids' college funds. By 32, I had the downtown condo, the savings, the successful woman LinkedIn profile. That's when the calls started. Can you help with the utilities? They messed up Dad's pension again. We're short this month, Megan, just until the check comes. You know how Social Security is. Megan, I've got this idea. Self-service car wash. You understand business. You get it. Mike's car wash lasted exactly 3 months. Then came the barber shop. Then an online marketplace importing cheap junk from China. You're doing great, Meg, Mom would sigh into the phone. You've got that fancy job and your nice apartment. Your brother is trying. Send something. You know how it is. Erica's style was different. Hey, sis. The girls and I are flying to Mexico. It's this amazing all-inclusive. We're just short a little. You're good with money. Can you help? She didn't even bother with please. I helped. Always. Because family. Because they have no one but you. Because you'll understand when you're older. Then there were the vacations I wasn't invited to. On Memorial Day, the whole extended family went to a beach house in Florida. I found out from Erica's Instagram story, sunburned noses, cheap wine, everyone laughing on a deck. Oh, Megan, she said when I called once. You're always working. We didn't want to bother you. Right. The first time my mom's voice softened toward me in years was about 6 months before the golden anniversary. Sweetheart, she cooed on the phone. Your dad and I have our 50th coming up. We've always dreamed of celebrating in a beautiful hotel in Manhattan, somewhere like the Plaza. You know we could never afford that. She let the sentence hang. You're the only one who could make this happen for us. I took the bait. Of course I did. I transferred a deposit of about $7,000. The planner emailed me all flowers and menus and special anniversary packages. I should have been suspicious when they started ghosting me in the group chat, though. At first, they answered my questions. Then, emojis, thumbs up, hearts. No real answers. When I asked about seating, there was a long pause. Then Erica finally texted, Wait, you're coming too? I laughed it off. Of course, I typed. I am your daughter. The day of the party, I booked the stylist, the makeup artist, picked up the watch set. I walked into that lobby believing, stupidly, that money could buy me at least a chair at the table. We both know how that turned out. Back in my condo, sometime between sobbing into Stacy's sweater and staring at the spreadsheet, another thought threaded through the wreckage. They didn't just throw me out of a party. They threw me out of a life I'd been paying for on autopilot. The next morning, my phone woke me up before the sun did, buzzing itself half to death on the nightstand. Stacy was snoring on the couch under a blanket. I slipped out of bed like I was sneaking past a sleeping dragon and padded into the kitchen. I made coffee and finally looked at my screen. The Chase app helpfully displayed my recent transactions from the card my whole family had access to. I'd opened that shared account years ago, just in case of emergencies. I'd forgotten it even existed. The card lived in my wallet, but everyone else had the number saved. Overnight charges glowed on the screen. Extra charges for the banquet, about $4,000. Skyline Lounge, a trendy rooftop bar where the after party had clearly migrated, roughly $2,000. A custom cake from a famous New York bakery, around $700. They were still celebrating on my dime after they'd had me escorted out. The app didn't show a charge for humiliation, but I mentally added that to the total. In my head, my mom's voice replayed crisp and cold. Get this beggar out of here. The coffee machine finished hissing. I poured a mug, sat down at the table, and opened Instagram. The first post in my feed stopped me cold. There it was, the cake. 3 tiers, gold accents, fondant roses. My mother, smiling beside my dad, his arm around her shoulders. Caption, 50 years of love. So grateful for my beautiful family. Not one word about who paid for that grateful family tableau. I scrolled. Photos from the Mediterranean cruise I'd gifted them the previous new. Stacy poured herself coffee, sat across from me, and met my eyes. So what now, sponsor? Now. That word felt different. I closed Instagram. Now, I said. I stopped being their ATM. For the first time in years, my chest felt light. Not good exactly. It still hurt. But the perpetual weight, the sense that I always owed someone something, was gone. I opened my email and typed, Ella, good morning. I need a full breakdown of all family-related expenses from the last year and the contact info for our attorney. Ella, my assistant, replied in 10 minutes. She always does. On it. Are you okay? Better than I've been in a long time, I wrote back. By lunchtime, she'd sent a fresh spreadsheet. I looked at the numbers like they were X-rays. Half of the banquet was already paid, about $7,000. The cruise for my parents, roughly $3,000 with departure in a month. A family vacation package for Erica, her husband, and their kids, about $4,000 flying out in 2 weeks. Another $2,000 wired to a landlord as a temporary loan for Mike's new barbershop location. A $7,000 renewal for my parents' country club membership in New Jersey. In total, roughly $36,000 already committed to their future fun, all from my money. By the afternoon, I was on the phone with our attorney. He listened, professional and unflappable, as I laid everything out. 10 years of transfers, no written agreements. We'll pay you back, you know us. All the usual lines. So, legally, he said, anything without a written loan agreement, promissory note, or at least some message specifying repayment will be considered a gift. You can't reclaim what's already spent. I figured, I said. What about the stuff that isn't fully paid for yet? That you can cancel, he replied. Future charges, bookings made in your name, those you're absolutely allowed to stop. As for the so-called loans to your brother without any paperwork, in the eyes of the law, those are gifts. 10 years of gifts to people who just called me a beggar. Cute. Thank you, I said. I'll take it from here. Ella called as soon as I hung up. They're going to lose it, Megan, she warned, nerves in her voice. It's going to be a storm. Let them, I said. I'm done living in this insanity. The next 2 hours, I treated my family like a failing portfolio. I built a detailed register by person, year, and type of expense, like internal bank loans. I even calculated opportunity cost, what those amounts would be worth now if I'd invested them instead. By the end, the totals looked like this. Around $200,000 directly spent. Roughly $45,000 in lost investment gains. $250,000. Price of my family. You could have bought a beach house in Florida, Ella murmured when she saw the numbers. Or started a charity. I still can, I said. But first, I have to stop bleeding. I drafted the cancellation emails the same day. The cruise agency. Hi, this is Megan Campbell. I'm canceling the booking under my parents' names. I understand there's a cancellation fee. Please process the refund to my account. Yes, there was a penalty, a few $100s gone. Fine. 95% came back to me. The resort company for Erica's family trip. Cancel the package completely. Actually, keep the penalty out of the total. I'll send my nephews some pocket money directly. They're not to blame. Mike's business loan. Hello, I'm blocking the scheduled transfer to this commercial landlord. This is my final decision. The country club. Please do not renew my parents' membership. Any future billing must go directly to them, not to my card. Then the plaza. Good afternoon. This is Megan Campbell. I paid the deposit for Saturday's event. Of course, Ms. Campbell. We remember you. How can we assist? I'm not asking for the deposit back, I said, but I want to cancel all the additional orders. roughly $4,000 worth. Bill my parents for anything extra, and please transfer my deposit to Harbor Light Children's Hospice, anonymously. A pause. Then, we'll handle it exactly as you requested. By evening, everything was done. Cruise, canceled. Family resort trip, canceled. Country club membership, gone. Mike's transfer, blocked. Banquet extras, removed. Money redirected to sick kids instead of people who called me a beggar. My phone had 34 missed calls. I turned on an autoresponder. As of today, I am no longer financing family members. All financial obligations are terminated. The shared account has been closed. Then I blocked their numbers. For a week, the silence was oxygen. One night, Stacy came over with a bottle of wine. We sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over Manhattan's skyline. "How are you?" she asked. "Free," I said. "And yeah, it hurts, but I was never their daughter. I was their bank." She raised her glass. "Then here's to your Independence Day." The phone started screaming again that night. I muted everything, but the screen kept lighting up, buzzing its outrage onto the nightstand. In the morning, I scrolled through the messages. Mike. "You killed my business, you bee!" Erica. "The kids are crying. They were dreaming about the ocean. How could you do this to them?" My father. "You're a traitor. After everything we've done for you." I had to laugh at that one. After everything they had done for me? At 7 a.m., someone leaned on the buzzer like the building was on fire. On the video screen by my door, my whole family stood huddled together. My mother, father, Erica with her kids, and Mike. In a building with 24/7 security, this kind of crowd was unusual. The concierge had already called up, confused. I told him to let them come up. They didn't wait for an invitation when I opened the door. They barreled in and arranged themselves in the hallway like an angry semicircle. A furious little committee. "You've lost your mind," Erica started. "You've ruined my kids' vacation. We're a laughingstock now." Mom flung her hands in the air. "I had to call everyone and explain that my daughter had some breakdown. I invested in that space." Mike jabbed a finger at me. "Signed contracts. You're destroying my business." My dad just stared for a long moment, then barked, "You will fix this. Right now. We raised you, remember?" I looked at them. At my mother in the mink coat I'd bought her. My father in the expensive glasses I'd given him for his last birthday. Erica's children in the high-end clothes I'd paid for as little surprises. "No," I said. One word. The hallway went still. Then they exploded. "Hysterical! We'll take you to court. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. You owe us for life," Dad shouted over all of them. "If you don't change your mind right now, you are no longer our daughter." I almost laughed. "And exactly when was I ever your daughter?" I asked quietly. I turned, walked into the living room, and opened my laptop. They followed, still shouting. I spun the screen around. "This," I said, tapping the spreadsheet, "is 10 years of my life. Totals, broken down by year and name. Here, about $200,000 spent on you in the last decade. And here, roughly $36,000 I canceled yesterday. Dates, amounts, recipients, purposes. These aren't emotions. These are facts." "You're ripping everything out of context," my mother squealed. "We never meant to hurt you." "It was stress," Dad added. "Every family goes through tough times." "Mom," I interrupted, "did you forget what you said when I came to your anniversary?" She fell silent. I didn't. "You looked at me," I said, "and you told them, 'Get this beggar out of here.'" The room froze. Erica and Mike stared at the floor. My mom's hands were trembling. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. Once upon a time, those tears would have sent me running to the bank to transfer money, fix something, carry something, bail someone out. Now I just felt tired. "From this day," I said, my voice flat, "there will be no more transfers, no more loans, no more surprise gifts. Erica, Mike, you're both capable adults. You can work and support your own families." My father hissed like a cornered cat. "You'll regret this." "No," I replied. "For the first time in my life, I have self-respect. That's worth more than your 'you'll regret it.'" My mother clutched her chest, going for drama. "You're abandoning your family, acting like you're better than us." I tilted my head. "When you had security escort me out of your party, what did people think I was? A server who walked into the wrong ballroom? Because you sure didn't introduce me as your daughter." They shuffled out eventually, single file, not looking at me. The door slammed. I stayed by the window, staring at the gray little courtyard between the neighboring buildings. Inside, there was no familiar crack where my energy constantly leaked out. For the first time in years, I felt intact. I waited for the tidal wave, the sobbing, the panic, the guilt. Instead, a different feeling rolled in, like someone had finally taken off a heavy, wet coat I'd been wearing since childhood. Space, air, the ability to breathe. My phone pinged. A text from Liz, my cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. "I know everything. I'm sorry I stayed quiet so long. I'm proud of you. You're strong." It was the first message in years that didn't smell like a demand or a guilt trip. The backlash took about 8 months to fully hit. First wave. Flying monkeys. That's what my therapist, Dr. Karen Lewis, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s with steel-strong boundaries, called relatives who suddenly remember you exist when you stop paying. Every Wednesday, I sat in her office and untangled the same themes. "You're not an ATM, Megan," she would remind me. "You're a person. You're allowed to exist without constantly over-serving others." We practiced not answering manipulation immediately. "Before you respond to anyone," she said, "ask yourself, what am I feeling? What do I want? Then decide if you respond at all." The calls and messages kept coming. "Aunt Valerie, your mom's worried sick. Her blood pressure is through the roof. Do you really want to do this to her?" A family friend. "Maybe you overreacted a little? You know your parents love you." Even an old professor from NYU somehow dragged into the drama. "You can't treat your parents this way, Megan. Family is sacred." My answer was always the same. Polite. Clear. "If you were silent when they humiliated me, please don't expect explanations from me now. I'm not available to help. I wish you well." No justifications, no essays, no back and forth. Second wave. Reality. Without my money, things in my parents' world started to crack. They sold their house upstate. There was no one to pay for maintenance anymore, my cousin Liz later told me. They moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in Queens. Mike shut down his latest LLC. Debt collectors started calling. For the first time in her life, Erica took out a loan in her name for a new kitchen. My photos quietly disappeared from family albums. In the big family group chat, it was as if I'd never existed. To neighbors on the landing, my mom reportedly said, "We have 2 children now," meaning Mike and Erica. The family I'd been chasing my whole life had always been made up. I realize now their love was a contract. I told Dr. Karen once. As long as I paid, I belonged. "And what do you feel now?" she asked. I thought about it. "Relief," I said finally. "And grief for a family that never actually existed." 6 months after the showdown in my living room, my phone buzzed with a very neutral message. From Dad. "Maybe we could meet for coffee?" I brought it to therapy like a school kid handing over a permission slip. "What do I do?" I asked. "What do you want?" Dr. Karen countered. "Honestly, I want to see if anything has changed," I admitted. "Without lying to myself." "Then meet," she said. "But on your terms, public place, 30 minutes, no money talk, and you leave if they cross those lines." We met at a small cafe in Greenwich Village. They looked older, smaller, like someone had turned down the saturation on them. We talked about the weather, their health, my work. Surface, surface, surface. "We miss you," Mom said at last, voice trembling. "Do you miss me?" I asked. "Or do you miss my money?" She looked down and picked at the edge of her napkin. Dad cleared his throat. "Just think about what it means to be a family," he said. "I do," I replied. "Every day." We finished our coffee. No one brought up bills, loans, or just this one thing. We said goodbye on the sidewalk like colleagues parting after a meeting. The power they'd had over me dissolved like morning fog. What was left was just me, whole, real, and a New Year's Eve party that felt like mine. Not a $1 million ballroom, a simple walk-up apartment in Brooklyn at my friend Gina's place. IKEA string lights taped along the walls, the smell of clementines and cheap sparkling wine. Laughter that didn't have an agenda. I'd also stopped being bled dry. Turns out, when you're not bankrolling multiple households, your business has room to grow. Without the constant financial hemorrhage, I opened a second office in Chicago, hired 2 brilliant young analysts, Katie and Tony, gave an interview to Bloomberg about how to stop losing money on toxic family ties. The article blew up. My bank account stopped looking like a public utility. My energy did too. Online, I found a private Facebook group for people who'd cut financial cords with abusive families. There was Gina, who'd been paying her parents' mortgage while renting a room for herself. Sam, whose older brother kept investing his money into the latest get-rich-quick scheme. Cassie, supporting a mother who spent everything on psychics. We met for dinner once a month. No judgment. No advice unless asked. Just people sharing stories over pasta. For my 35th birthday, I did something radical. I celebrated on my terms. No politely forced relatives. No, you pay, we show up. Just my people. Stacy was there, of course. Gina brought cookies. Sam showed up with the first printed copy of his short story collection. Self-published, but he already had interest from a small press. Cassie came with her 3-month-old son Tim, named after her grandfather. They loved me for exactly nothing I could buy them. Later that evening, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Liz and my Aunt Margaret, my dad's younger sister. The one who had walked out of the golden anniversary right after I'd been kicked out. No scene, no words, just grabbed her coat and left. Aunt Margaret handed me an old envelope. "This is from Grandma Eleanor," she said. "I wanted to give it to you earlier, but your mother always said, she's not ready yet. I think you are now." Inside was a letter on yellowed paper and a statement from an investment account. "Megan, my dear granddaughter," it read. "You were always my favorite, though I never said it out loud. I knew you wouldn't break. The others needed my daily support. You only needed to know that I believed in you. This money is yours and only yours. Use it when you finally stand up for yourself." Grandma had been gone 7 years. In that time, about $200,000 had quietly grown in that account. While I was learning to choose myself, that money had been waiting for me. By then, the place upstate was already gone. They'd sold it when there was no one left to pay for the upkeep. They squeezed deeper into that 1-bedroom in Queens. Mike shut down yet another business, blaming everyone but himself. Erica's perfect kitchen came with payments and interest. Her first taste of a reality I'd been shielding her from for years. My mother started telling neighbors on the stairwell, "We have 2 children," meaning the ones who still played by her script. I started something else. Part of Grandma's money went into establishing the Eleanor Campbell Foundation. Small scholarships and emergency grants for young women who'd been financially and emotionally abused by their own families. The rest stayed put, quietly earning. I knew someday I'd know exactly what to do with it. One winter evening, I stood by my own window, watching snow swirl in the streetlights. The city glowed with holiday lights. Behind me, my apartment was loud. People were arguing about movies. Someone was trying to teach baby Tim how to clap. It smelled like potato salad and cheap champagne. An ordinary New Year's Eve, in an ordinary apartment with very ordinary people. I looked at the chaos and felt my face relax into a smile. So this is what family looks like, I thought. Not the one you're shoved into by blood and obligation, the one you choose yourself. The one that doesn't charge admission or send you an invoice for existing. And this time, I wasn't the beggar. I was the one who finally shut the ATM down and walked away with my life. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.